So compared to plants, animals have chemical and nervous control that enable them to respond to environmental stimuli. So now let us first know the function of the nervous system. We say that the nervous system is one of the body's control systems. It is a system that allows now for the detection of stimuli and generation of response, therefore coordinating now with the body activities. So it controls higher function. Nervous system consists of circuits of neurons and supporting cells. So the nervous system also gathers information, processes this information, and elicits a corresponding response or reaction to the stimulus. So the nervous system is subdivided into central nervous system or CNS, which is composed of the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system or the PNS, which is composed of the body nerves. So in this diagram here, it shows the brief description of each division of the nervous system. As you can see, the central nervous system is made up of the brain and the spinal cord, while the peripheral nervous system or the PNS is composed of the nerves that branch out from the brain and the spinal cord to the specific body parts and divided further into somatic and autonomic nervous system. The somatic nervous system controls now the voluntary body movements, while the autonomic nervous system controls now the involuntary action. So how do the central and the peripheral nervous systems work together in the nervous response? So first, there will be a detection of stimulus by sensory receptors. Then it will be transmitted now, so the signals is transmitted now along the nerves, and it will be interpreted and analyzed by the control center. And once it is analyzed, the impulse now is transmitted along the nerves, and lastly, there will be a response now coming from the effector. Now, let's understand what a nervous tissue is. So, in Gen Bio 1, you've learned that nervous tissue, it consists of the neurons and the neuroglial cells. So, what is a neuron? So, the neurons, these are cells or signaling cells. So, these are cells that do the communicating either with one another or with the muscles and the glands. While the glial cells is also referred to as the neuroglia. These are the supporting cells. They provide now physical support and it guides the neurons' growth. So, in order to fully understand how neurons carry out their function, let us first learn about their structure. So, remember that all neurons have the same basic parts. The enlarged rounded cell body or soma contains now the nucleus, the mitochondria which supplies now the ATP, the ribosomes that manufactures now the proteins and other organelles. Dendrites, these are short branch extensions that transmit information toward the cell body. We also have the axon. Axon is also called as the nerve fiber. It conducts now nerve impulses away from the cell body. It is typically single long extension that is finely branched at its tip. Each tiny terminal extension communicates with another cell at a junction called as the synapse. So the axon may be enveloped by a myelin sheath for faster conduction of the impulse. While the nodes of Ranvier, these are the gaps formed between the myelin sheath where the axons are left uncovered. It allows now the generation of a fast electrical impulse along the axon. So the nervous system includes three classes of neurons. These are the sensory neuron, the interneuron, and the motor neuron. The sensory neuron transmits incoming impulses from receptor to control center. The interneuron, it transmits now impulses within the control centers. While the motor neuron, it transmits now outgoing impulses from the control center to the effector. So, we have this question: how do messages pass from one neuron going to another? first, an electrical impulse now triggers the release of a neurotransmitters from the axon terminal into the synapse. So what is a neurotransmitter? A neurotransmitter is a chemical signal that travels from the sending cell to a receiving cell across a tiny space, which is called as the synapse. So this neurotransmitter now cross the synapse and bind to special molecules on the other side called as the receptors. Then these receptors receive and process now the messages. So in the organization of the nervous system, the peripheral nervous system consists of the nerve cell outside the central nervous system. The neurons of the brain and the spinal cord interact constantly with those of the peripheral nervous system, or the nerve cells outside the central nervous system. The peripheral nervous system, or the PNS, is functionally divided into two divisions. First, we have the sensory or the afferent division and the motor or the efferent division. The sensory pathways now carry signals to the central nervous system from the sensory receptors in the skin, the skeleton, and other organs. The motor pathways of the peripheral nervous system includes now somatic or the voluntary nervous system and autonomic or the involuntary nervous system. The somatic nervous system now carries signals from the brain to voluntary skeletal muscles, while the autonomic nervous system transmits impulses from the brain to the smooth muscles, cardiac muscles, and the glands. The autonomic nervous system is subdivided into three. We have the sympathetic nervous system, which dominates under stress. It involves during the emergencies. It is called as the fight or flight reaction. Then we have the parasympathetic nervous system, which returns now body into normal or the rest and repose. While the enteric nervous system, this is responsible for the function of the gastrointestinal tract.